Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another episode of the Cat Skull Academy, the series that aims to give you the best start possible in EVE Echoes. Today we're going to be having a look at another one of the trainer cruisers, this time the Caracal trainer. So if this is a ship that you're looking at getting started with, we're going to be covering how to fit this, and then where to proceed from there in terms of progression both in ships and skills used to pilot them. Now, if you are interested in missile ships, I do have a video on how missiles work that explains in depth what all the missile stats mean and how damage is actually applied to your target. So I do strongly recommend that you go watch that and get a good feel for how missiles actually operate so that you understand the different types of missiles we're going to be talking about. Anyway, if you do enjoy this video, let me know by hitting a like on it, sub to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, and ding that notification bell so that you never miss a video, as I am uploading daily. If you've got a particular topic you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comment section down below, and come find me on the social media channels along the bottom of your screen now. As this channel is done entirely using my phone, if you do want to go the extra mile to help support me, you can do so by joining me on Patreon. Again, details are along the bottom of the screen now. Epic, thank you very much for listening. Let's talk about the Caracal trainer. Now, at this point in my trainer cruiser videos, I usually point out that I'm not a cruiser pilot and that I focus on frigates, so I don't have any skills relevant to flying this particular ship, which then, of course, would mean that you and I are both looking at this from the same sort of standing, looking at it as a brand new ship with no skill points that we're looking to train into gradually and go from there. Now, that's not strictly true with the Caracal trainer. In this case, I do actually have 4 skill points in medium missile and torpedo operation, simply because I fly stealth bombers, which are frigates, and are something we will look at briefly later on in this video. But for now, just suffice it to say that for the most part, I'm not trained in cruisers, so we are looking at this fairly fresh, other than my damage and range will be slightly higher than a fresh pilot. Anyway, let's have a look at the Caracal trainer's stats itself. Now, from left to right, you can see that it has 1 drone tube. It's got 4 high slots, 2 mid slots, 3 low slots, 2 combat rigs, and 2 mechanical rigs. It is tech level 5, but can be insured for repairs due to the fact that it is a trainer ship. Now, for the skill bonuses, it gets medium missile torpedo operation, plus 5% medium missile torpedo velocity. That means those missiles and torpedoes fly faster, and by flying faster, they fly further, which you should know from having watched my video on how missiles work. Now, that means at full 5 medium missile torpedo operation, you are flying 25% faster, which means 25% additional range. That is a huge bonus, and something we are going to lean into quite a bit in regards to the Caracal. Now, for every level that you have in Cruiser Command, you get a bonus of plus 5% flight velocity, making this very slow cruiser otherwise actually fairly mobile. A 25% flight velocity increase is nothing to be sniffed at. Now, I don't have anything in that, so we are running it at the very slow thing. Now, it's worth noting in regards to the Caracal trainer, looking at its other stats down here, that its capacitor of 1592 gigajoules is very, very low. The Caracal trainer is going to require you to be very careful with your capacitor usage in regards to using an afterburner, shield boost, or that kind of thing, because it does chew it very quickly, and it does not have a very large capacitor bank. That is the big weakness here of the Caracal trainer, and actually that does carry across somewhat into the Caracal itself, but we'll talk about that more later. So, if you're starting out with the Caracal trainer, those skills there, we've got the additional range and velocity for missiles, and we've got flight velocity as well. That insinuates a possible kiting build, because we can get extra range and we can control our distance better thanks to that flight velocity bonus. Now, there are 2 ways you can fit for this. I'm going to showcase both of them, and I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of both. Now, the first build I'm going to show just uses Mark V medium missile launchers, full complement of 4 of these in the top slot. Now, these do a decent whack of damage. You can see 28.7 DPS is what it suggests. That is not what they're going to do. Missile application means you very rarely, if ever, actually apply that full damage, which is why missiles always look like they deal more damage than some of the other weapon systems, but in actual effect, they don't. The reason we've gone for the Mark V medium missile launchers here is because of that missile range here of 40 kilometers. We want as long range as possible. Now, these aren't actually going to do all that much damage, especially against targets that are smaller than it. So frigates and destroyers are going to actually take as long as cruisers to destroy with this setup, but it's the range that matters, because it doesn't matter how long it takes to kill something, as long as you can kill it, and in this case, it's all about that survivability, keeping your distance, so we've gone for the range there. This means in the low slots we need some form of propulsion. I've gone for a Mark V medium afterburner. Technically a micro warp drive is more beneficial for kiting, but because of the Caracal's, because of its capacitor, the last thing I want to do is lop off 25% of the Caracal's already small capacitor in order to use a micro warp drive. That's not a good idea. Stick with an afterburner. It's not great, but it will help you just manage your distance a little bit better. Because we do intend to take a little bit of damage as we relocate and move around the battlefield, a Mark V medium shield booster allows you just to repair that quickly from now and then, just to boost those shields back up to a healthy state if you do take a bit more damage than perhaps you're intending to. Very, very useful to have. Just be careful that you only switch it on for the cycles it's required for, and then you switch it off quickly so that you don't drain your capacitor down to dry. The third slot I've gone for here is a Mark V missile guidance computer, simply because, as you can see here, having this just fitted, not even activated, having this fitted increases the explosion velocity and reduces the explosion radius, which again, if you've watched my How Missiles Work video, you'll understand means that these are going to apply their damage better than they were before, and it increases the flight time again by a further 14.12%. That means extra range. You can then activate this for a 500% increase to those bonuses. It's a 500% increase to the bonuses, not to the actual things. That means that the flight time bonus goes from 14 up to, what, 35, 75% increase for the flight time bonus, not that it's 500% increase to flight time. Big difference there. Now, this is absolutely vital. I cannot state this enough. For the mid-slots on this build, 100% you need at least one Weber fire. If anything gets up close and personal, like, for example, a frigate or a destroyer, you are going to struggle to do anything to it unless you can slow it the hell down. Optimal range of 11.2 kilometers. Anything hits that 11.2 kilometer mark, you hit it with one or both of these webs to drop its movement speed down. Now, these do stack cumulatively, so the first one to hit will take them down by 51%, the second one will take them down by 51% of their remaining speed. So if they're going at 1,000 meters per second, the first one will drop them down to approximately 500, the second one will drop them down to approximately 250. That makes for a much easier to hit target if something is up close and personal. And I'm going to put on screen now a little card that showcases what happens if you don't fit a stasis web. 2 Condor 2s, worth approximately 4 million each, took down a 300 million estimated value based on the fittings on the Market Caracal Navy issue. That is insane. That is insane, and that's all because that Caracal Navy issue couldn't run away because it was warp disrupted, and it had no way of actually applying damage to those Condors because they were just moving too fast. No webs. What I'm trying to say here is fit webs. Don't be that guy. Fit webs, or you will lose to destroyers and frigates that get up close and personal. As I said, this is just one of the 2 builds. I haven't gone for a drone here because I don't have one on hand, but it is worth, if you have a cheap drone sitting around, equip that. That will help against anything that gets up close and personal as well. Don't try and use the drone at a long range. It's not going to work. It's only going to have about, what, a 20-kilometer range to it, but it means if anything does get within Weber fire range, you can launch that drone at them to do a little bit of extra damage as well, whilst your missiles try and take them out. The aim of this build is to maintain as maximum distance from the targets as possible, so that you're taking almost no damage, and you can just pound at them from relative safety. It means that you can just survive longer, and you can actually clear. I've cleared with this exact build, this exact ship you see on screen, I have cleared tier 7 story encounters, the ones that are like 1,500,000 ISK. Those have been completed using this exact ship. It is possible, it just takes a long time. Anyway, let's have a look at the other build for the Caracal trainer. This second build swaps out the Mark V medium missile launchers for Mark V medium rapid missile launchers. Now, if you've watched the video on how missiles work, you'll understand that rapid missile launchers are essentially faster firing versions of the size down. So these are this is kind of like fitting 8 small missile launchers to this particular Caracal. Now, the advantage of that is, of course, that you get the better application of the smaller missiles. You can hit frigates and destroyers a lot better, and the faster firing speed means that you do actually do a decent whack of damage still against cruisers or battlecruiser sized targets. The downside of this, though, is that missile range. It has almost halved here, down to 23.51 kilometers. You do need to be a lot closer, which probably means you are now within the enemy's gun range, so you're going to be taking a lot more damage yourself. As such, if you do go for this build, you're going to be needing your shield booster active, so you're going to want to have extra skill points in shield booster operation, and definitely into cruiser engineering to get that additional boost to your capacitor, because otherwise that shield booster is going to chew through your capacitor, you're going to run out of capacitor of juice to power it, your shields are then just going to get ripped apart and you will get destroyed. You do need to be a little bit more careful with this build, but it does pay off at high risk, high reward with that extra damage. Basically, they're higher DPS to start with, and they apply their damage better, so it is a significant damage increase, but as I said, high risk, high reward. It's also worth noting in the low slots, I've swapped out the missile guidance for a ballistic control system. The reason for this ultimately is here you can see it's got a damage bonus just for fitting it, a flat damage bonus to all your missiles of 5%. When you activate it, that goes up to 7.06%, and it then goes up to an additional, the activation time adjustment is shot as well there by 400%, which means they activate faster, you hit for more damage, that kind of thing. It's all about getting up close and personal, hitting for as much damage as you can. Now, in regards to both of these fittings, the rigs are ultimately the same. Now, I've gone with the rigs that you got from the rig box from the daily login rewards here. You can see I've gone for a Warhead Rigger Catalyst just because I wanted that reduction in explosion radius. That means that the damage gets applied even better from both of these missile types, though this does benefit the medium missile one slightly more than it does the rapids. And the second slot here is the hydraulic bay thruster prototype for that increase of flight velocity, which again, extra flight velocity means more missile range. More range means you are less likely to be hit by your opponent's guns, and that means you're more survivable. You can stay in combat longer, you can keep hitting people for longer, which is always useful. For the low slots, I have just popped in an auxiliary thruster, simply because I don't like how slow cruisers are, and that little 10% boost there just helps it maneuver that little bit better. Being faster up close and personal with this brawling build means I get hit less often, and being on the kiting build, that means I can manage and modulate my range that little bit more accurately and swiftly as well. Well worth having there. For the second low slot there, probably something that ups your capacitor would be highly recommended if you've got any of those engineering rigs. Something that increases your total capacitor or your capacitor recharge speed. Get those in there now. If you find yourself enjoying the Caracal, you might be asking, well, where do I go from here? Now, of course, the Caldari tree is going to be a great starting point for this. And if we go up to the cruisers, you'll see that obviously, other than the Caracal trainer, there is the Caracal cruiser itself. Now, what the upgrade from the trainer to the cruiser will do is it gives you an extra low slot, so you can have both missile guidance computer and a ballistic control computer there, or you can add in extra tank or whatever you fancy there. It also gives you here the medium missile torpedo operation bonus, adds in a reduction to the medium missile torpedo activation time, which means you're firing faster, more missiles in space, more damage over a period of time. It's straight up DPS increase. Cruiser command is still the same. It is worth noting that the capacitor increase there, you've got 220 extra gigajoules there in the capacitor. It's a fairly large increase. It certainly helps keep this ship alive a lot longer and actually pumping the shield boosters and that kind of thing there. Now, if you do enjoy the Caracal, obviously going up to the Caracal Navy issue is going to be worth your while too. This then adds an additional high slot, so you've got 5 possible missile launches on this, straight up massive damage increase in and of itself. Medium missile torpedo activation time does appear to have dropped to 2% rather than 3% reduction, but again, you've got an additional turret on here, an additional launcher, so that additional launcher more than makes up for that slight reduction in the activation time. It's worth noting that upgrading to a Caracal Navy issue is only really useful if you are training into advanced medium missile or torpedo operation. If you only have basic, then the standard Caracal is ultimately going to benefit from it more. Once you hit the maximum on basic and you start training into advanced medium missile torpedo operation, that's when you upgrade into a Caracal Navy issue. Again, with advanced cruiser command, you will start to get scan resolution and sensor strength in there as bonuses, which means it will lock on that little bit faster, especially to smaller targets. Now, there are some options in the Minmatar tree as well for cruisers we'll cover in just a moment, but I want to talk about where else in the Caldari tree you can possibly go from here. So if we then go up into battle cruisers, you can start looking at things like the Drake and the Cyclone. So I've just got to find these on here. That's the Ferox. The Drake here is a battle cruiser, and I did actually do a video on the Drake during the final test. I love this thing. You'll see here, it gets bonuses to medium missile torpedo velocity innately, and it also gets additional damage there for advanced medium missile torpedo upgrade. So if you're training into medium missiles, both in regards to medium missile operation and medium missile upgrade, then by the time you hit advanced, you're still, those skills that were benefiting the Caracal are now benefiting the Drake as well. Battle Cruiser Command is what you'd go into from there as well, but you can see here, 7 high slots, 5 low slots, 3 mids. This is an absolute powerhouse. If you want to fit this with some missiles, you can do some serious heavy damage with this. Ultimately, kiting is a little bit more difficult because it's a slower moving ship, but that's kind of how it is. You know, that's the trade-off you get. You get a lot extra damage, but you are going to struggle to sort of maintain range against faster moving opponents. Ergo, bring a friend to take out the frigates and destroyers, or fit stasis weather fires into those mid slots. Now, I did mention the Minmatar tree has a couple of options worth looking at as well. For cruisers, you are a little bit... It's a weird situation for cruisers in the Minmatar tree, because you have the Bellicose. Now, the Bellicose itself, you can see 4 high slots, 3 mids, 4 lows, and 2 of each rigs. It does get bonuses to missile torpedo velocity and medium missile torpedo damage for advanced cruiser command. So if you are going into cruiser command for whatever reason, if you're going up to the Navy issue Caracal, for example, the Bellicose will still benefit from that as well, with additional missile torpedo velocity and missile torpedo damage. The weirdness on this, though, is that at this point in time, advanced electronic warfare also gives it a bonus to target painter effects and target painter optimal range. Why that's weird is because target painters aren't actually in the game yet. You've got a bonus here on a ship that does nothing. So if you are going for cruisers for missiles, I really wouldn't look at the Bellicose yet. It's worth having in the back of your head as something to remember when target painters get added. But for now, if you're going cruisers and missiles, stick with the Caracal. That does change, however, once we come up into battle cruisers, because we then get the Cyclone. Now, the Cyclone is an absolute powerhouse. This thing, 6 high slots, 3 mids, 5 lows, 3 of each of the rig type, and you can see here, roll bonus of 25% medium missile torpedo velocity, extra range or extra damage, extra firing speed up close so they hit faster. Advanced medium missile torpedo upgrade, same as you'd have for the Drake, gives you extra reduction to activation time and additional explosion velocity so that you can hit and apply that damage better. Battle Cruiser Command then gives you additional shield booster amount, and that's kind of the key point we're getting at here. The Drake is very good at hitting things from range and dealing high amounts of damage. The Cyclone is an absolute tank. 24,816 overall defense is massive, especially with that shield booster bonus. This thing, as I've seen in the final test, and we know it's the same from live here based on the stats, it is a tank. It can take a massive amount of damage before it even has to worry about anything. It'll sit there and just keep pounding you whilst you try and dent the shields. It just, it doesn't go down. And if you've got a friend who's flying something like a Burst or a Bantam, some kind of logistics frigate, you just sit in space for ages. Well worth considering going into if you like your missiles, because this thing, as I said, it can tank the dead space anomalies quite comfortably. This will take a lot of damage before it has to worry about anything. At this point, I would also be remiss if I did not talk about stealth bombers, because ultimately if you've started with a Caracal and you're training into like the medium missile torpedo operation, then stealth bombers, despite being frigates, actually benefit from those exact skills. That's why I've got the skill points here. I'm not interested really in flying a Caracal. I've got those skill points in medium missile torpedo operation because of the stealth bombers. Now here you can see that the roll bonus for a stealth bomber, I'm looking at the Minmatar Hound, but this does apply across the board to all 4 of them, ultimately gives you a 90% reduction to medium torpedo power grid need. Normally if you try to fit a medium weapon system onto a frigate-sized hull, it's just not going to fit because it takes up too much of the power grid, or you're not going to be able to fit them properly, should I say. You then have reductions to cloaking device reactivation delay, the ability to fit a covert ops cloaking device, and a reduction to the lock delay on that as well. But here you can see medium missile torpedo upgrade gives you bonuses to the medium torpedo explosive damage, medium torpedo EM damage, and the medium torpedo flight velocity. These are frigates that are designed to use torpedoes to take out ships much larger than themselves. You fly a small complement of these, like 3 or 4 of those, fly up to a cruiser cloaked, unstealth, and just hit it. hit it for absolutely maximum damage. We've got some guys in the Cat Skull at the moment who are flying around in a Hound with about 500 DPS. It's insane the damage that these things can theoretically kick out if you can hit the target with them. Now again, as I said, there are versions of these in all of the trees. The Minmatar Hound is my favourite, but if you are dead set on Caldari, any of these start at Tech 6 here. You can see the Manticore is the Caldari version. When it loads, there we are, the Manticore is the Caldari version, there's the Nemesis in the Galente tree, and the Purifier in the Amar tree. Those are your stealth bombers. If you're getting into medium missile torpedo operation skills, you may want to give these just a consideration. I'm not saying you should fly them, I'm just saying you can. It's an option as upgrade. Finally then, it's time to talk about relevant skills. Now, if you're flying a Caracal trainer, then of course the most relevant skills are the ones that the ship directly benefits from as part of its bonuses. That means, of course, we come into weapon technology to missiles, and then to medium missile torpedo operation. Now, if you are an Omega clone, then during your daily login rewards, you will have received a weapon skill crate. That will give you the option of taking a chip that actually takes medium missile torpedo operation straight up to level 4, and of course that's highly recommended. If we open up what that skill actually does, once it hits level 5, it's straight up 20% increased missile torpedo damage and a 15% reduction in the explosion radius, so it can apply that damage better. Of course, the Caracal itself also gets, I think, what is it, 5% flight velocity bonus to the missiles for that skill, so you're getting a lot of extra for those skill points. It's not just the skill effects itself here, but also what the ship does with that skill. Of course, it's not just the operation you want to be looking at, but the upgrade too. And certainly if you're going for the kiting build, the upgrade is a vital skill, as you can see here, because not only does it give you 15% medium missile torpedo damage, it also increases the flight time and the velocity by 10% and 4% there. That's actually, those two combine to give a fairly extensive boost to your range, which means that kiting build really benefits from medium missile torpedo upgrade. Now, as I mentioned, the two things that are well worth pointing out with the Caracal itself are under maintenance technology. You are going to need skill points in shield operation, because what this does is reduces the shield booster capacitor need. For that brawling build, this is a vital skill, because otherwise you are just going to be chewing through capacitor at a rate of knots. And if you do go for that brawling build and you're looking to go up to something like the Caracal Navy issue, then yeah, it's probably worth taking this up into advanced. Definitely as well, as I said, the Caracal does have the difficulty with its capacitor bank being a little bit smaller than some ships of nearby size, so if we go into electronics, under engineering, you're going to want to have a look at cruiser engineering. At full tech level 5, not only does this increase the power grid by 25%, it reduces the warp capacitor need for actually warping out by 30%, it also increases the total capacity by 25%. That means your capacitor is a quarter bigger, which just means more juice to pump your shields, more afterburners, that kind of thing. You can keep those running for a longer time. 100% cruiser engineering is a vital skill for a budding Caracal pilot. Those will actually also really help with the Cyclone as well, just as a point, both the shields and the engineering there, because you can keep those shield boosters running and keep that tank going. Finally, of course, flying cruisers, you want to look at cruiser command. What this ultimately does is increase your inertia modifier reduction and your cruiser velocity. It means you move faster and you angle better, but also you'll see that a lot of cruisers benefit from this skill as well. The Caracal certainly does, gets additional flight velocity, of 5% per level you have in this. Same with battle cruiser command if you're going up to the Drake or the Cyclone. Well worth looking into. For the honourable mention of the stealth bombers, yeah, it's worth having a look at the small versions of that as well. Frigate command, all that kind of thing. Look at the stats for what the ship benefits from. Train into those if that's what you're looking for. Anyway, folks, that about wraps up everything that I want to talk about in regards to the Caracal line of ships, starting out with the Caracal trainer and where to go from there. I hope it's given you some inspiration and some ideas. I think it's some very cool ships that the Caracal can lead into. I know a lot of people talk about the Caracal as being the be-all, end-all of PvE ships. Genuinely, of the four trainers, the Caracal is not the best for PvE. That, in my opinion, is the Stabber, and the best for PvP is the Omen. The Vexor kind of can be, but it requires a lot of skill investment to get it up to that point. The Caracal, in my opinion, is actually the weakest of the four, but that doesn't mean you can't make it work, and certainly, once you go from there, it can lead into a lot of exciting builds. Anyway, hope that's given you some inspiration and some ideas. Do let me know how you're getting on with your Caracal trainer, what ships you're looking to train into, and how you're enjoying using missiles. Let me know in the comment section below. Come find me on social media. You know the drill by now, folks. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!